We start off with a traditional territory acknowledgement. And if there is someone who would like to do the acknowledgement, it's a bit different because we are virtual and we're all spread out all over the place. But I can also do the traditional territory acknowledgement for where I'm sitting. So I am Kusame from the Haisla Nation, but I'm not actually residing in my traditional territory. I'm like many First Nations, living away from my home. I am in Ktunaxa traditional territory, which is in the sort of southeast corner of British Columbia. Today is the first of a series of webinars for Indigenous climate action, and we have 3 guest speakers. But before we get into the guest speakers, I would like to invite Anna from Rueben Trust to give a few words about Rueben Trust and thank her for hosting the webinars with respect to the technology and getting us all organized. After Anna, I'd like to invite Guy Dauncey, who is the co-chair of the West Coast Climate Action Network. And then we will get into introducing our guests. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you so much, Connie. My name is Anna Simeon. I'm the campaigns director at Rueben, and I wish to welcome you very warmly, all of you who are attending this webinar. It's a great pleasure and honor to be welcoming 3 chiefs tonight, all of which we are either working with right now or have worked in the past on stopping some of these projects. Rueben raises legal defense funds for Indigenous nations to protect their lands and rights. And we are particularly keen and motivated to work on climate issues, as all of these Indigenous leaders are. And so tonight, busting the fossil fuel corridor, I think is super important in order to find what a climate solution is, to know what a climate solution isn't. And I'm thinking in particular of the Site C Dam, which is so often billed as clean energy. So without further ado, I'll yield the floor to our guests, and thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Guy, would you mind saying a few words about West Coast Climate Action Network, please?
Yes, thank you, Connie. So I'm Guy Dauncey, the co-chair of the West Coast Climate Action Network with 200 member organizations around the province. And as we got started this year, we knew right from the beginning that we needed to work alongside the Indigenous peoples right across BC and to support their struggles, to support their initiatives. We're all in this together. We share the same land, we share the same planet. And I'm really grateful for their participation, for your participation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving us along, we have 3 guest speakers, and I just wanted to check the order. Chief Roland Willson, we had anticipated that you might be the first, considering you're kind of the farthest at the end. Are you okay with starting first, or would you like to start at the southern end, which would be Rueben?
I could start first.
Thank you very much.
I have to apologize. I was busy doing other things and this completely slipped my mind.
Oh, no worries. For the people who are viewing, would you mind sharing a few words about yourself before you get started?
Are we starting right now? Like,
yeah, you're being recorded.
Okay. So I'm on the hot seat.
You
well,
are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Roland Willson. I'm chief of the West Moberly First Nations. My nation is located in northeastern BC. Our nation is the closest nation to the actual infrastructures in place with W.A.C. Bennett Dam, which created the Willson Reservoir in 1969. Also the Peace Canyon Dam, which created the Dinosaur Reservoir, and I believe in 1982, I think. The Willson Reservoir is touted as being the dam that produces enough energy to light 1 in every 3 light bulbs in the province of British Columbia.
Wow.
It's the massive infrastructure. is one of North America's largest earth-filled dams. It inundated hundreds of kilometers of river. I'm not sure. Does anybody know? Can you do Google Earth imagery on this? Yeah. So I can take you, and I was just doing this, so I was thinking it might be a good to show you, because a lot of people don't actually know where northeastern BC is and what's up here and what we're talking about. So first off, Chief Roland, Willson, Moberly First Nations. We're one of the signatories to Treaty Number 8, which is one of the historic treaties in BC. The treaty promises us a number of things. And I don't know, most people have heard about the Yahe decision that came out. The Blueberry River First Nation just won a massive court decision with BC on cumulative impacts, where the court deemed that BC did not just infringe the treaty right, they trampled the treaty rights of the First Nations. And literally, the judge ruled a 6-month suspension of all permits for BC to get an agreement in place with Blueberry River First Nations on industrial development in northeastern BC. What ensued after that, that happened in early, I think, May, that happened. And the suspension of permits was supposed to happen after 6 months. If BC and Blueberry hadn't got an agreement in place, then the court was going to suspend all permits. BC voluntarily suspended everything. Nothing in northeastern BC has happened permit-wise for permit approval since that decision. So things have come to a standstill. And Vaughn Palmer out of Victoria there just wrote an article about this. Industries talking about divesting their investments here in northeastern BC could result in billions of dollars. And what BC has done is they sat down with Blueberry River First Nations. They're one of 8 Treaty 8 BC First Nations in the treaty, and they sat down with Blueberry since they won the court case. But the treaty rights are cumulative. We all have all the signatories to the treaty have those treaty rights, and we're all overlapped here. It's not like we have treaty territory, Aboriginal territory. We have treaty territory, which encompasses all of the treaty territory. I have the right to hunt and fish anywhere throughout treaty territory as any other Treaty 8 First Nation. So any development that happens impacts everybody. And when I apologize, we were actually just having a discussion where we have a couple ministers showing up here tomorrow, and we're trying to talk about this cumulative impacts Yahe decision. Do we have sharing capacity? Am I going right into my presentation right
Yes,
now?
it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just hung up the phone. Anna sent me a text saying, "You remember about this webinar?" And I was so engaged in this other stuff, I completely forgot. I apologize. So I'm a little scatterbrained right now.
We are really grateful that you're here, Chief Willson.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So
That
Site
often
C.
happens with leaders, is that you are torn in so many ways. So,
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. If people don't know what Site C is, what is this?
so we have a map. I see.
Am I
Moberly Lake.
able to do? Can you share screen with me?
That's a different thing. Yes, we can.
Do you guys see this
Yes.
Google Earth image?
Yep.
Okay, so I gotta first figure out where I am. So this is Canada. I don't have all this stuff on here, so I'll try and be quick with this. So this is Moberly Lake right here. This is Dawson Creek. Shetland, Fort St. John. This area here is literally the Montney shale gas play. This is the breadbasket for BC for oil and gas, coal mining, hydroelectric. This big thing over here that you see this is the Willson Reservoir. Right here is the WAC Bennett Dam. It's at the top end of the Peace Canyon Dam. They flooded this and this created this monstrosity of a reservoir. It's literally just a big dead chunk body of water. If you know anything about ecology and stuff like that, lakes are defined as living entities. They have a shoreline that thrives with wildlife, and that's where life begins, is in the first 2 meters of shoreline in the water, and on shore, all the small animals, the babies kind of hang out there until they get bigger, and then they move out from there. This thing here does not have an established shoreline. It raises and lowers whenever they need power, so that life doesn't ever get established there on the shore. So it's literally just, they keep throwing fish in it to try and keep it alive. But everything in this thing is covered with methyl mercury. This is the Rockford Pen. We're doing a caribou recovery. Because of this flooding of this reservoir, it fragmented the caribou migration pattern here. And we've got a southern population of caribou down in here and a northern population of caribou up here. And there's 219 caribou left in the southern part of the population. West Moberly and Moberly First Nations are doing the only active recovery penning program in, I think it's the world, literally right now, where we're successfully recovering caribou. We took the Quincy Zaw herd, which is the herd that resides back here. 8 years ago, it was down to 16 animals. This year, I think we just got them up over 100. And it's the only successful maternity pen that's happening. Anyway, so that's aside from that. This is a webinar about climate impacts, and what a big piece of what I wanted to kind of show you here is they talk about Site C as green, clean, renewable energy. I'll show you here where Site C is. This is the Moberly River right here. And this down here is the Site C dam. The dam is actually going to go right about here and inundate the Moberly River and the Halfway River farther up north. But this is the development of Site C right now. It's pretty massive. And all this, when they were announcing Site C, they were announcing that they needed clean, green, renewable energy for future 400,000 homes in Northeast, in BC. And right after they announced the Site C project, they were announcing a dam, a power line that went from here north up to this area up in here, sorry, up to Fort Nelson. Now, if you know anything about Northeastern BC, you would know that there's not going to be 400,000 people moving up to Fort Nelson. It's not going to happen. Fort Nelson is a remote community, not remote the fact that it's hard to access, but it's remote that it's way up north. What Site C is going to be used for is the production of oil and gas. I'll show you this. All these little dots, all these little lines, these are all well sites, oil and gas lease sites. This is actually the Saturn plant right here, which was built about 5 years ago. This is a Shell plant. But all this oil and gas is what Site C is going for. They want to electrify the oil field and get them off running natural gas, which I guess in some way is a good thing. It makes them cleaner. But what it does is it makes it so that it's more accessible to develop oil and gas. And literally, this is shale gas. This is natural gas This is what's going to fill the coastal GasLink pipeline that's running from right up here. Actually, coastal GasLink starts right here and runs south to Gidimt'en. I believe it's Gidimt'en or Haisla. Where's Haisla territory? Is that Gidimt'en or Prince Rupert?
Don't get me started.
Yeah. Anyways, that's what's happening. It starts here, and all the gas from our area is going to go into that pipe and go south. There's also a couple more big pipelines. The North Montney pipeline has come in from the north here, which is a big 48-inch pipeline comes across here into here. I don't know how much time I'm babbling here. But to give you an understanding of.
Sorry, Chief, I think Carissa is giving us the 1 minute.
Oh, okay, so just to give you an idea, this is just a small location in northeastern BC of oil and gas development. And when you scale it back, there's Moberly, West Moberly, my community. And this is the actual facilities, WAC Bennett, Peace Canyon's right here on the highway. This is the Peace Canyon Reservoir. And Site C will go from here all the way down to here. And it'll literally wipe out the last remaining functional valley that we have. West Moberly has access to. This river, the Peace River, is the main arterial river in our territory. Everything flows into the Peace River in our area. So whatever happens to it actually happens to everything else in the area.
Thank you very much. That's I'm at a loss of words, but grateful that we have people that are looking out for all the cumulative effects.
One of the things I wanted to mention, sorry, one of the things I wanted to say is that when they announced Site C, we immediately said that we weren't opposed to the development of the energy. What we were opposed to was the destruction of that valley, and it still stands today. There's absolutely no reason that the province has to destroy this valley in order to create that energy. They can do it through solar, they can do it through wind, geothermal. Northeastern BC is a geothermal hotspot in the province of British Columbia. We could have 10 geothermal plants probably in northeastern BC that wouldn't even come to a fraction of the footprint of what Site C is proposing to do. And plus, it's $16+ billion now. It started out at a $6 billion project, and it's $16 billion, and it's still climbing from there. There's no end to the amount of it.
There we go. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you shifting gears quickly to come back and join us. You have many supporters throughout the province, and I wouldn't hesitate to say much farther than the British boundaries that we have on Canadian soils. I'd like us to move to our next speaker, Chief Smogelgem. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, and if I haven't, please forgive me. Would you like to do the next presentation?
Sure.
May you share a few words about yourself? And
I was just going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Smogelgem. I'm the head chief of the Sun House of the Tsleil-Waututh clan. I've lived in Gidimt'en camp for about 10 years until about 2 years ago. I moved back to my home community of Willson. When I was up in Gidimt'en camp, I was helping them set up a healing center and a cultural center so that we can encourage our people to begin moving back out to the land, because the vision and the idea that we had is one that was brought to us by a lot of our ancestors who lived their lives out on the land. But the idea was to create a healing center so people who are struggling with social issues in our home communities would have a place to go to like their ancestors did. My late grandmother, Jeannie Nazal, her maiden name was Jeannie Basil. Her brother was Frank Basil. And Frank Basil attended Indian residential school with two of his sisters and one of his younger brothers. They're all young children, like a toddler size. They never made it out of Indian residential school. They never made it out of Lajak. He was the only one who made it out, and he was silent about what he knew had happened there. He went right from Indian residential school and signed up for World War II and went to the front lines in World War II and fought in Germany. He was a successful sniper there, and he ended up picking up a lot of PTSD just from the war itself. So he had to deal with the PTSD from the Indian residential schools and experiences that he had there, and then he had to deal with the PTSD that came from World War II. He came back home and he spent time out on his territory. And the territory that he was brought to is a place called Chlor River. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Chlor River is one of the more recent sites where the Leksamasu started to take a big stand against Coastal GasLink. Coastal GasLink has a man camp set up in that specific territory where my great uncle went to heal with his uncle. His uncle Joshua brought him up there. So my great uncle Frank Basil went there to heal from all of his PTSD and spent a year up there to learn his language again, living on the land, learning the basics and the survival techniques of our people again. And it was an attempt to kind of bring him back from all the trauma that he experienced. More recently, like the Chlor River site that I'm talking about is super contentious for us right now because it was one of the last Wet'suwet'en territories. The Wet'suwet'en have 22,000 square kilometers of territories that we went to court for. We went to the Supreme Court of Canada, and in 1997, the Delgamuukw case recognized our title and rights. And it gave the parties that have to deal with us the responsibility to meaningfully consult with our people. That has never happened. Our people were never meaningfully consulted. Instead of dealing with hereditary chiefs, you look to the last 12 years, industry has decided, as well as government, they're pushed by government to only focus on dealing with Indian Act bands who have tiny little parcels of land on our territories, and they're regulated by the federal government. They're there to administer funds so that our people can try and survive on these meager little funds that they have for reservations. They gave the power to these Indian Act councils to start making decisions because they wanted to undermine the hereditary system. And this is something that we've been fighting since the Delgamuukw case came along. We've been fighting hard to try and fight for the recognition that we deserve, and also our ability to assert ourselves on our lands as we see fit, as rightful title holders. And we've had nothing but problems since the beginning. We've been forced onto these Indian reservations and told that, we can't leave them like in the old days. If we do leave them, we're not allowed out to our territories. You look a couple of years ago when Unistoten camp and the Gidimt'en people were fighting for our lands. You've seen it all over the news. Look to last year when there was another huge confrontation, and the Gidimt'en jumped forefront to make sure that the Unistoten were going to be protected. The Gidimt'en took a huge step last year in doing that. The reason why they wanted to do that is because they wanted to present to the world that it's not just one rogue Wet'suwet'en clan that is fighting for our lands. All of the chiefs and all the members of those clans are responsible for managing our territories and taking care of them. It's been a difficult road for us in our attempt to assert ourselves because we've been up against stalling tactics from government, not just the federal government, but the provincial government as well, in our attempt to have our rights recognized. The United Nations asked Canada to give them an update on Indigenous rights. And this was a couple of years ago. I just read today in the paper that Canada had said they're not going to be doing anything like that until next year. Why did they stall? There's no explanation about why they stalled. We know that there's still unfinished business on Wet'suwet'en territory. There's still unfinished business on Sokapuk territory. There's still unfinished business on Tsleil-Waututh territory. They have no interest in conforming to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and protecting our rights. Rather than doing that, they're stalling on that responsibility to explain themselves so that they can push harder against us. The resistance that they've met with the Wet'suwet'en is the same as the resistance that they met on the TMX pipeline. The Sokopmuk and the Tsleil-Waututh and all the nations up and down that pipeline have been fighting it, and they're still fighting it today. The Wet'suwet'en are still fighting these pipelines. When I lived up at Unistoten Camp, we actually managed to stop the Enbridge Northern Gateway pipeline, which is a petroleum pipeline that was proposed to come from the tar sands. They were planning to bring in tar sands fuel to Gidimt'en. We fought really hard and long on that one. There's a huge campaign that we ran on social media and on the ground, boots on the ground, on these front lines, fighting these guys. We managed to kill it. The Northern Gateway pipeline was killed a couple of years ago. We also had the Pacific Trails pipeline, which is another fracked gas pipeline that was proposed to come in from northeastern BC. We fought that one really hard. We attended all the community meetings and came in with their banners, and they attempted to try and come into some of our home communities and entertain the band councils and try and convince the members of these communities that the band councils that have a say in the lands. We as community members came in to tell them, no, that's not the case. Band councils do not have a say on hereditary lands. Band councils have a say on budgets that come in from the Canadian government to administer to people who are forced onto these reservations. These reservations were set up on other people's territories. So we're stuck in a situation that colonialism created. And the chaos that came from that is unfolding today. You can see what's happening in southern BC today. They're fighting old growth forests in Fairy Creek. The RCMP, even without the injunction, began enforcing their rule of law against people who were peacefully trying to protect those territories down there. Without like that last judge that was reviewing it had taken down that injunction and said that injunction no longer applies to Teal Jones, the police showed up the next day and continued to enforce what I'm not even sure that there was no injunction in place. They came up into Wet'suwet'en territory and did the same thing. They brought violence with them. You can see all the videos and the photos that came from the front lines when these armed officers came storming over the gates with their guns drawn, pointing it at our people and violently arresting our people on these front lines. How are we supposed to, as people, as a collective, as a nation of people, how are we supposed to answer questions that talk about Indigenous rights to the United Nations when the powers that be through the federal and provincial governments are sending RCMP officers to come in and attack us? We also know that a lot of the pensions that come from civil servants, the RCMP, government workers, people from all walks of life that are connected to the government in one way, shape, or form, their pension plans are invested in these projects. Their pension plans are invested in the TMX pipeline. They're invested in Teal Jones, the Teal Jones group. They're invested in the Coastal GasLink pipeline. They're invested in the RCMP. They have one thing to protect, and it's not to protect, you know, these just people who want to move forward with these legal permits that they're getting from the government. They're actually protecting their pensions. The governments have set it up so that the pensions are tied directly to these projects. And the pensions are dependent on the success of these projects. So you have the RCMP and the government pushing really hard to change the narrative on everything that's happening right now. Just recently, I saw what was it called? The Canadian Energy Center put out a post on Twitter calling us protesters. Waututh and people living on our lands, protecting our territories, they labeled us as protesters. And they put in that same statement that the Coastal GasLink pipeline is meant to help fight climate change, which is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. How can a petroleum pipeline in any way assist climate change, especially frack gas? You look at how frack gas is created. They inject all these chemicals into the ground. It's not shale gas like some people say. It's not this natural gas. It's not. It's very, very unnatural. It's one of the most unnatural fuels out there. They have to pollute the ground. They have to pollute the permafrost of these areas to extract gas, chemicals that are similar to natural gas, similar enough to call it natural gas, out of these rocks and try and ship them to different parts of the world. The frack gas industry was completely tanked a couple of years ago when the Americans and the Russians jumped in the game, and they took over the production and the marketing value of frack gas globally. And you see finance people involved in finances they were looking at the viability of these projects and saying, well, these projects shouldn't really be going ahead because there's no market for it. Justin Trudeau and Horgan fought extra hard to try and keep it on the table. They made promises to the corporations to continue on like business as usual and attempt to force these things through no matter what. We had the federal government approach the Waututh and chiefs last year and attempt to sit down to talk with us about a memorandum of understanding between us and them and a path forward. We sat down, we talked, we said we'd be willing to sit down with you guys and go through this stuff. This is 1 year ago. We haven't seen anything at that table. The Waututh had been entertaining this idea around a memorandum of understanding between us and the governments to begin moving forward in a more humane, in a more productive way. But instead, we've been ignored. They sent the police after us out on our lands again. So we're back at square one again. You look at the Gidimt'en. The Gidimt'en have gone back out and they began asserting themselves in our territories. Our enforcement officer was arrested by the RCMP on his own territory. Zahale is one of our hereditary chiefs. He's my wing chief. The clan assigned him as our enforcement officer to make sure that our wishes and our concerns are taken care of on our territories. We're in the middle of a climate change court case right now. There's an appeal that's happening in the BC court process where Canada has decided we've decided to appeal a decision that was made against us around climate change and the Canadian government and the Charter of Rights. Canada can't adhere to the Paris Agreement because they have too much vested interest in what's happening in oil and gas. You look at what's happening over the last 10 years, I think, even as recently as that, they've dumped billions of dollars into the oil and gas sector to try and bail them out. And we're still fighting them. It's costing them so much money. The government's spending billions of dollars, the corporations are spending billions of dollars, and we're stalling them. We're going to stop them and we're going to kill them because we have that responsibility. We have the responsibility to all of our members. We have all the responsibility to all of our unborn members because we're borrowing these territories from them. We have the responsibility to protect these places. And it's getting harder and harder and harder because we're facing an increasingly fascist system that has imposed itself on us, that is forcing us to stay off of our own territory so that they continue to extract and destroy everything that they can that's in their way. And that's something that we have to fight. We're going to keep fighting it for a long time. We're not going to back down. I just got off a call with Chief Boss a little while ago, and we're meeting with some of the other chiefs. The Haudenosaunee people have called us and asked us to invite them down to spend time with us. They want to show solidarity because we traveled to their territory last year. So now they're looking at coming out west to spend time with us, to show solidarity with us. The Six Nations Confederacy is looking to join us again. The Shutdown Canada movement is very, very alive and well. The people from all walks of life, from all across this country, are standing together with the Wet'suwet'en, with the Tsleil-Waututh, with Tiny House Warriors, with everybody who's fighting these corporations in the courtrooms and on the ground. There's people from all walks of life, from all across this country, have joined us in this. And they're going to stay with us. There's no intent in backing down until the governments decide to grow some sense. Because they've lost it. They've lost it because greed has blinded them, like all the corporate masters that they've got. And we're all going to end up continuing down this path of destruction unless we start doing something about it. And that's something that we have to do collectively. And I think we're doing a good job of it so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. There were so many memories that came to me as you were speaking. Many First Nations know exactly where they were when the Delgamuukw decision came forward. I'm hoping that with West Coast Climate Action Network, that we can help leverage the strength or the energy needed, because climate action and changing climate, as you say, exactly is a collective effort. So
I just want to add just one more small thing. The RCMP have actually set up an exclusion zone, which is illegal. You can't set up exclusion zones for stuff like that. But they've set up another exclusion zone. And I just saw a post come in from Unistoten Camp this morning stating that medical supplies that were coming up to their healing center were turned around at the RCMP blockade. And RCMP threatened the people who are trying to deliver medical supplies to a healing center. There's people trying to deliver food up to families. There's families up there with children. They're living in homes out on their territories. Molly's husband lives up there with 2 of their kids. He's taking care of the kids while she's in the front lines. And they can't have access to food or medical supplies because the RCMP stopped it. You know, there's elders and children up in these places that are at risk now from not having access to food and medical supplies. And it's even harder now because the grocery stores are empty up there. Yesterday, the panic shoppers went out and they just bought everything up in the grocery stores. It's empty. So whatever people were trying to deliver up to these places, like, it's even compounded more with the fact that they can't have access to other foods and medical supplies that were coming up to try and help our people. So we're faced with the chaos that's coming from the climate change that we're all seeing in the news today. We're faced with the consequences of that, as well as the fascist decisions that are coming in from the RCMP and the governments. I just wanted to add that too, because we're living in crazy times right now, and it seems like the governments have gotten even more crazy than we thought they would. Thanks.
you're welcome. Thank you very much. It is crazy times. And definitely we need to support each other. If we don't support you, then what? Then the next project and the next project. We're all in this together. So thank you very much. Wow. It's quite a bit to digest. So thank you. I would like to invite our next speaker. And Chief Rueben George, are you?
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Thank you.
Yeah, I got my Movember going on. Got to support men with cancer. I couldn't grow one all my life until recently. And it's not even full. My mom says it's sparse. But I have no hair here, so that's all I could do is Movember. Thanks to my brother chiefs, for all that you do. It's such important work. I was just recently up in Wet'suwet'en in the summer and saw the really good work that you're doing, and I support you full-heartedly. And what we've been saying all along is starting to happen, and it started in the summer with all those brutal fires. I knew so many people who lost their houses, and when those trees burnt, they lost their strength and their roots. Then all this rain comes, and this is the type of things that happens. There's nothing holding together the earth. And that picture right there, it cut out the top of my arrow, but what that's pointing to is the TMX pipeline right there. The white things right there is the TMX pipeline that got wiped out. What we explained in our 1,200-page assessment based on Tsleil-Waututh Nation laws that there's 87% chance of a spill. And it didn't take too long that it's not even completed. And this is part of the twinning. So that's part of the mess that's going to leak into the already catastrophe that happened. And, it's so many reasons why it doesn't make sense. Their initial estimations in the very beginning was 4.5 billion. And that's what they ended up buying it for when they spent 3.5 billion on it. And then, that's 14.5 billion more than what they estimated so far as what they spent. And they only built 25% of this damn pipeline. And based on those numbers back then, it was estimated to take 30 years to pay that off. So now it's up to 20 billion and they only built 20% of the pipeline. And how much more taxpayers' money is going to cost? 30% of the tax, it fluctuated. I think it changed from what I'm saying now, but a year ago was 30% tax was going to Alberta, 17% to Canada, and 3% to British Columbia, taking all the risk with no benefits. And that's just the beginning of it. When my nation went to Wall Street and started talking to the Canadian or to the New York pension fund to ask them to divest out of the Alberta tar sands, which they did a year ago, which is really great. They pulled over $350 million out of the Alberta tar sands. We told them it was killing people, and they asked us to represent them as their proxy at the Kinder Morgan AGM, and we did explain that it's a problem and people are going to die, and people are dying. It's the highest concentration rate of cancer, one of the highest in the world, where people live up there. I don't know if any of you been to Fort McMurray, which is a lot like Houston, Texas. When the wind changes, you could smell it from the town. And this is the same as Houston, Texas. When I was down there in the Kinder Morgan AGM, I had a tour of all the refineries, and they had 51 miles of refineries. In Vancouver, when you do Google Earth, like my brother Roland Chief did, that you look over Vancouver and you probably look at about maybe 100 refineries. 15 years ago, they had 21,000 refineries blowing up smoke. So you could smell it from the city of Houston, Texas, all those fumes going up. But that's well, anyway, we went to the Kinder Morgan AGM and it was really good because we gave a presentation, and when we told them, I said, we made a 1,200-page assessment and we're going to sue Canada because Canada didn't consult us on building this pipeline. He got really mad and he yelled and he said, "Get out, go to Canada, go talk to him." And I talked to the shareholders and I said, people are dying. It's not a good investment. We're going to do everything that it takes to stop it when we're stopping it. $350 billion company. And I said, you guys are investors, make good investments with your money, don't invest in things that aren't good. And they listened because 60% of their stock fell within 3 months of us speaking there, and 75% of their dividends were cut. But that was explaining the work that we did within our law. Then we did a spill analysis, we did a clean analysis, we did multiple economic studies because it fluctuates so much. COVID times it went below zero, right? The price per barrel. And remember too, when you see or you watch the price per barrel, it's typically $10 less for Canadian dirty oil. And I don't get why they want to sell to China too, because China did a 30-year deal with Russia to get Middle East oil that's cleaner and cheaper for them. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about, but I think they're screwed because it's going to cost more, and it's too many ways. When a spill happens, like it did already with that picture that I showed, if it happens in Vancouver with a tanker, within hours, 1 million people will get sick within hours. Within hours, 500,000 birds would die and never be replaced. And if everything runs smooth, the resident orcas are going to die. And we brought that as evidence. And they say, well, we're still going to side of the best interest of Canada. And then even when we presented our spill analysis, the 3 federal court of appeals handpicked by Trudeau, I'm not supposed to say that, but they were handpicked by Trudeau. They said, well, your spill analysis to Tsleil-Waututh looks right. Quite a big discrepancy in it, but we're still going to side with the best interest of Canada. Even when we win, we lose. Even when they agree, they lose. So getting to why I went up to Wet'suwet'en and Haida, and why I'd love to talk to Roland, and why I want to talk to Nuu-Chah-Nulth, who just won a court case, why I want to talk to Chilcotin, who of course they had a historical court case and with land and title, why we want to talk to the Mohawks, which we have done and which we do, why we want to talk to anyone protecting trees and protecting fossil fuels, even the murdered missing woman inquiry. They asked me to MC that when they came to British Columbia. I phoned my lawyer friend. She was the lead lawyer 10 years ago, and I said, should I do this? And she said, no, they're looking for credibility. 17 First Nation directors quit because they didn't like what they're doing. The good part of it was they're listening to the testimonies of the victims' surviving family. That was good. But the inquiry should have been on the police for the brutality they did it, and what they continue to do, and the lack of investigations. The coroners for tagging the bodies for dying of natural causes when we could see obviously that they're murdered, and the judges for not putting people in jail for killing them. That's what the inquiry should have been on. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And the same problem with a lot of our nations who won in court are still stuck in negotiations, like I say with the Wet'suwet'en. With brother, with a little bit that I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Nuu-Chah-Nulth and Chilcotin, and look at the Mi'kmaq, scientifically proven independently and by the government that any fishing of lobsters that First Nations would do would not affect the numbers of the lobsters. And not only that, they won in Supreme Court. But no matter what the issue is, the same colonial system that created the residential schools to suppress First Nations is the same colonial system that still exists today, whether it's murdered and missing women, trees, fossil fuels, residential schools. The government comes from the same standard, which is not to budge on First Nations land, title, people, rights. It's always a fight, and it doesn't have to be. Because even when we're right and we win, like I said, for us personally in court, when the 3 judges said, you're right, but we're going to side with the best interest of Canada, which is not the best interest of Canada. Taking all the risk, like I explained, all the tax money, and guess what? I pay tax. You know, all that is being wasted on something that doesn't make economic sense, that we've proven that. But anyway, what we need is leverage. And how we get leverage is multiple different ways. You know, I'm not a protester, I'm a protector. We always said to Tsleil-Waututh, we'd protect what we love. Now we're to that point, I believe. As a Tsleil-Waututh Nation member, I believe we're at that point where we have to protect what we love. When the courts don't listen, even when we're right, we're wrong. They still have to do something, but we have to create leverage, and that will create leverage by protecting what we love. But another thing that will create leverage, if they're treating us all the same, whether it's Haida, Wet'suwet'en, Nuu-Chah-Nulth, or the Mi'kmaq, if they're treating us all the same, we have to come from the same too, I believe. What I want is not, this is what we talked about in Wet'suwet'en territories, is to hold a summit, a First Nation summit, and share with one another that we're going to work with one another. because they're coming from the same ugly standard that created that colonial system that we're still fighting against. And it doesn't have to be a fight. It's still the same thing. So what we want to do in the summit is come together and create leverage with one another and protect what we love. Because the names of where my brothers are chiefs of, tie them to the land. Like Tsleil-Waututh means people of the water around Vancouver. Why? Because time out of mind, in the beginning, our first mother came from those waters. It's a long story. If I tell it to you, it'd take 4 hours, and I probably only got a couple more minutes. But that's what it means, people of the water around Vancouver. And what we learned throughout our life, just like my brothers talked about, in their law, that we have a reciprocal relationship of spirit to those waters that we protect. My Auntie Lee Miracle just passed, and I love her so much. She did a whole bunch of great work on behalf of, and people know as a writer and a poet, but she came and helped support. When I asked her to, spoke at the rallies and spoke Murder Miss Women, whatever I hoped she'd come to, she did. When I asked her to, and we did a beautiful ceremony yesterday. It's like her teaches me of that, how important our connection is to the water, how beautiful it is where we come from. The part of her wanted to be there. And that's what we did in the ceremony yesterday. Telling us and all the people that are there in that ceremony that Tsleil-Waututh people have a reciprocal relationship to the water. And when we go, we're going to go be with our mother in those waters and in the heavens. And that's what we protect. That's our law. That's simple. That's our law. And we never ever compromise ceremony when I'm running it. So we shouldn't compromise our belief. And our law supersedes Canada's law. And my son, I prayed that I'd go debate Trudeau somewhere, and my prayers answered, but through my son, and he said, Trudeau says, I'm making choices for the future generations at a fundraiser dinner. And my son went and he goes, you're a liar. And a week later, you're incapable of making those choices for me, the future generations now, that since you can't do that, we're going to do that for you because that's within our law. That's within our law to protect. Even when they're so dysfunctional enough that they can't even protect their own future generations themselves because they make ridiculous decisions that are destructive. Look at the fires. Look at these floods. Look at these mudslides. It's there, and this is what we've been saying all along, like we're screwed. And they are causing it. And the most important thing is I see comments there saying, they're cutting the trees down in my backyard because TMX. When I read about it, I had to do something about it. My own family said, you can't beat a $350 billion company. Christy Clark's for it, Alberta's for it, Canada's for it. You can't beat them. My own people would say that sometimes. And I won the argument really easy. And I say this all the time. I said, well, we're to Tsleil-Waututh. Oh, okay, let's do it. And that's the same with you, each and every one of you. The start of doing something about it is coming on here. There's nothing, I had nothing, no resources. I had nothing except just me and some really good allies. And we did something. That starts with somebody, and you could be that somebody. If you love it enough, do something about it. If it feeds your spirit, if you go in the woods here and you feel really great and it feeds your spirit and you feel the love coming from the trees, it's your duty and responsibility to share that goodness with that the forest gives you, is that good love and spiritual feeling that feeds your spirit so well that you're happy. If you feel that, if you really, really, really feel that, you have a duty and responsibility to protect it and to share it. And that's how it starts. So love you all and blessings to you all. Thank you, my brother chiefs, for all the beautiful hard work that you're doing. And thank you, each and every one of you organizations that are here and support. Thank you, all you individuals. It's still not too late. I believe we could still do something, and we have to do something. It's worth it. I would love to have grandkids. My son's 24, and I said, it'd be cool if I had a grandkid. He said, you'll have a kid before I would, Dad. And I said, no, I'm not. But anyway, I want to see things turn back to the way it is. and we could still do it because we proved it into Tsleil-Waututh by raising our salmon count, by elk reintroduction, by cleaning our clam beds. All those things are working. We're the biggest solar panel farm in the lower mainland Vancouver. We're trying, and everybody needs to try. We have to wake up.
Thank you. What a great way to end on the last of the three speakers. So we were slated to go till 5 o'clock, and I'm wondering, we have a couple of questions, I believe, Anna.
We do. We sure do.
Are you three okay with staying another 10 or 15 minutes to answer questions?
I might have to cut out. Have a gala to speak at
Pretty soon. Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and so we'll maybe we can take one or two questions, Anna, if you wouldn't mind.
Great. Thank you so much. Before you go, Chief Rueben, there were so many appreciations for all three of you just pouring on the chat, and people really stating their commitment to help fight the RCMP violence and stop it, and all of the destruction that's happening. So thank you everybody for that. I think the first question was about Site C and whether there is still a possibility to stop it and or do the project in a way that wouldn't block the river, that would still create energy and allow First Nations communities to thrive. So that one is for Chief Willson.
Well, I have to believe there is. We still have the Site C litigation happening. The judge has stated that they will hear our arguments before they inundate the water, which is pretty much once they start inundating the river, then that's going to be the end of no return on the project. So there's still a possibility, whether it's a realistic possibility. I come from a dreamer culture, so I have dreams that we can stop this thing. Is there a way to do the project where you don't flood the river? That was what we were trying to accomplish in the beginning. They had other projects that they kind of ruled out before they even talked to us, and when they came and talked to us, it was Site C or nothing type of thing. And we were like, well, you've got all these other proposed things that they wanted, but say BC Hydro operates dams. They're a large scale dam operator. They don't want to run of the river projects, things like that. They want a great big legacy project, and that's what they want to do. And we're fighting it. We've got a court. We've been working with Anna at Raven, fundraising for our court challenges and things like that. They've appointed a mediator, so we have to go through that process with them. Mediation. We still have WAC Bennett, Peace Canyon, the two previous dams that we've never had a discussion with BC on, talking about damages from those things. The whole issue with the caribou and the methyl mercury in the fish that we have here comes from those existing dams already, and they're not historic. They're historic in the fact that they were built years ago, but every year there's new impacts that arise from the operations of those dams. So it's an ongoing impact that we suffer here in the Treaty 8 territory. Mm. I did want to say, with Chief Rueben was talking about getting together and doing it ourselves. That's what we did with the caribou program. We realized that BC was not going to do anything to recover the caribou, and we literally took it upon ourselves as stewards of the land and said, well, we're doing it. They didn't fund us the first couple of years that we ran the program. We constructed the first pen without permits from the province, and once we had caribou in the pen, they were kind of like, well, what do we They couldn't stop us because we had media behind us at that point in time, and then it became successful. And lo and behold, it's their project now. They invite us to attend our pen. But that's the thing. If as nations, Indigenous people of this land, it's not their responsibility to look after us. It's our responsibility to look after us. And that's what we need to start doing. We need to start stopping depending on the government to look out for our best interests, because it's clear that they don't have it.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Anna,
so much,
do you
Chief
have time?
Wilson. Yes, there is just one other quick short question. If Ruben can answer it. It's about the tiny houses and whether you know if the tiny houses from the tiny house warriors were flooded in the flood just yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the picture that I put up was from Canihus from yesterday. So I think she would have, I think she would have put that up if they were. But yeah, I got that picture from her on her Facebook page. So I didn't see anything about those being flooded. But thank you, everybody. I got to go speak at another event, and good to see you, brothers. Hope to talk to you soon. And in the springtime, I'll come up that way, okay? Longer than a couple days, I hope, but for sure I'll come up. And my dog, look at sits there. I always want to sit beside me when I'm doing something. Yes, yeah. See you, Roland.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much, everybody. So to support these nations, I put links in the chat to support them directly through the Tsleil-Waututh Sacred Trust and the Yinta Access website. And I also put the Raven campaigns for the Wet'suwet'en and against Site C with Chief Roland.
All right. I think maybe we can take one more question and then perhaps do a closing.
Yes, I don't have any other questions. They were mostly comments, and there was a wonderful suggestion from multiple people about writing to this Canada Pension Plan about these projects and to any other pensions that you may have. So please take that action. It's a great action, and it kind of fits with the Wet'suwet'en shareholder actions that they're doing.
Great. I am also aware of a campaign about the RCMP actions on the land and how First Nations Indigenous people are being treated outside of the legal scope of the RCMP. So that could be something that we could share around, perhaps, Guy, in our next newsletter.
Yeah, and actually you're right. There was a question, how do we collaborate to end the RCMP violence against peaceful land defenders?
Chief Smogelgem, do you have any words of wisdom on that question?
What was the question again, sir?
How do we collaborate to end the RCMP violence against peaceful land defenders?
We're up against systemic racism. We're not just up against the RCMP, we're up against systemic racism. The systemic racism exists at a macro scale, not a micro scale. It exists with the way that the general populace of colonizers views us. It relates to the way that media portrays us. And it relates to the way that government and industry treat us. This is something that we're up against. That body count. When we talk about like systemic racism, it's not just a series of hurt feelings. Like, we have a body count of people in our histories as Indigenous people of our members who fell victim to systemic racism. And it's at a massive scale. It's everywhere. Colonization has put a really, really nasty blanket over our lands. And it's our job to get that blanket off because it suffocated us long enough and killed enough of our people. We need to be free in our lands again. We don't need the RCMP coming in to try and tell us how to live our lives. We don't need corporations to tell the government, to tell the RCMP and how to live our lives. We need ourselves to figure out how to live our own lives on our own lands and without being interrupted so that we can protect it for future generations. Because you look at what's happening today with the fires and the flooding, that has been mismanaged. There is no protecting of future generations with the trajectory that society is taking today. So dealing with the RCMP, that's a part of the problem. They're a part of the problem. They're a huge part of the problem, but they're still just a part of the problem. We have to deal with the corporations, we have to deal with government, and we have to deal with the society at large as well, because a lot of people just aren't getting it. And media is like playing a huge role in it. They're misinforming the general population on the details of what's happening with Indigenous peoples on our front lines. And that's going to have to change. What's that?
Thank you for that fulsome response. I think now would be a good time to thank our guests. And Guy, can you remind the people who are watching when the next webinar is going to be?
Yes, thank you, Connie. In January, if Carissa can share the slide about the webinar on January the 12th, Wednesday, January the 12th at 4 p.m. on community solutions. And one of the focuses is going to be the focus on heat pumps. There we go. Angie Wright-Simmons from the Gidimt'en and Leona Humchit from the Healthsuk. So on Wednesday, January the 12th, we'll send you all the information. Do join us for that one. And then we'll have two further webinars coming up, one on renewable energy and one on forests and the land and the need to totally change the way we see the land and we see forests. I mean, we see today how the flooding is so closely related to clear cutting above the lands that are being flooded. But thank you, yes.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to just give a final thank you to our two chiefs. It is really difficult for me culturally to tell a chief that his time is up, because back home you just wouldn't do that. So I appreciate that little difference that we have in webinars. And thank you again for participating with us.
Thank you. Have a good night, all. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And find a way to support us. There's a huge fight against the pipeline right now. It's going international, but it's also going nationwide. If people can find a way to jump in and find a way to help us with their fight, there's events happening all over the place. And if there's no event happening in your area, create one.
Thank you.
Show love and solidarity. Thank you.
Okay.